Hello. May I ask you to take your places and we start with the session? I don't know, the speaker is on, yeah? Hello. Need a whistle, I guess.
Whistle.
They are taking notes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Can we start with the afternoon session? As you see from the title, the session is on interaction with industry and potential complementarities with technology infrastructures. My name is Maja Bučar, and I come from the University of Ljubljana from Slovenia, besides being a member of the ESFRI Drafting Group on Industry-ERI Cooperation. The title you have on the screen is not the correct one. The title of the drafting group is, in fact, Industry-ERI Cooperation. But I'm also a member of the support team to the current ESFRI chair. The panel discussion, as you see, will focus on how do research infrastructures cooperate with industry and what potential complementarities can be with technology infrastructures. I believe that the structure of the panel, which is sitting here besides me, is very appropriate for the task. I'm very grateful that they have accepted the invitation, and I will shortly introduce them now to you so that I don't appear again up and down here for each of the speakers, but they can just follow in the order that they are specified on the screen. So first, we will be addressed by Michael Ryan from Science Foundation Ireland, who actually chaired the drafting group on Industry-ERI Cooperation. And he will present the work of this group, particularly the two surveys which are undertaken within the drafting group and the main findings and recommendations, so as to set the floor on what ERIs actually do with the industry, how this cooperation looks like, where the main problems were located, and what are some of the suggestions of the working group, how to move forward. Next speaker is Monica Ringwig, who comes from, now I have to move this one down, which doesn't want to move. There we go. Excuse me. Who comes from Research Institutes of Sweden and is representative of EARTO. She's a chief officer of RISE, this Research Institute of Sweden, which is an independent research institute owned by Swedish government, which focuses on applied research and has quite a vast experience on technology infrastructures, since RISE has, according to what Monica has entrusted me, about 150 of them. Monica's presentation will be followed by Judith A., who is a policy director at European Roundtable for Industry, ERT, which is a Brussels-based platform for CEOs and chairs of the leading European industrial companies. She runs at ERT work streams on competitiveness, innovation, and jobs, skills, and impact. All the issues which are highly relevant for the cooperation of research infrastructures and technology infrastructures with industry. So I will pass the floor to them. Each of them has been asked to present their key points in 5 minutes. And then after that, we move to the groups to discuss the questions. So please, Michael, would you take the floor?
Thanks, Maya. Hi, thanks, Maya. Good afternoon. I'm conscious I don't have any slides, so listening to me for 5 minutes talking without slides is not going to be very enjoyable. So I'm going to try and keep it as snappy and as short as I possibly can. So, as Maya indicated, we indeed set up a drafting group last year to gauge the interest or the level of cooperation between industry and research infrastructures from industry side. And it followed a survey and a report that Maya herself had coordinated back in 2022, which was the other way around. Firstly, before I give you a brief on that one, so the two of them are very much interlinked, and we did it that way on purpose. But in a nutshell, the purpose was to sort of get a good indication, a good understanding of the level of engagement between industry and research infrastructures, and try and identify areas where things perhaps could be done better. So it is important to note that it was a report, and it is a report, and it's published on the website at the moment. It's not a critique, because it's important that if things are working well, well then they're working well. How can we learn from them? But it's important that we understand things that aren't working well and how can we improve them. And I think that's really the emphasis we wanted to get to. One other thing, in the last session we talked about access. What you're going to note from me anyway, and I don't know about my colleagues, is that there are so many similarities between what we talked about in access and what we're going to describe, or what industry has told us, which I think is a good thing, because the last thing we need, in my view, is a shopping list of problems or barriers, but rather if we can hone in on some cross-cutting specific problems that need addressing. What is the impact of not addressing them? What is the impact of addressing them? And I think that's an important point to make. So firstly, in the 2022 survey, the idea was that the landmarks were approached to talk about their engagement with industry. There was about 35 responses to that survey. Following on from that, and a report, a very comprehensive and excellent report, if I could say that, from Maya was produced, and colleagues, Zavinia was produced and published. Following on from that, we did our survey, which was launched at the beginning of this year. We had about 157, 160 respondents from industry that came in, that shared with us their experiences of engaging with research infrastructures. Now, in brief, the main findings. So, most of the cooperation, may not come as a surprise, was through EU co-funded projects and projects that were funded nationally. In other words, there was quite a small number of projects that were classified as contract research from industry, or indeed others. Now, that just raises a point in itself. Do we want more? Is there a need for more? Should this be seen as a revenue generating aspect? With regards to using the research infrastructures, industry noted that obviously the use of research equipment was the most important, but access to data was proving to be crucially important for them. Maybe not necessarily as we might think, because they're working on a specific project and they need data for that specific project, but rather looking at data as a far wider, bigger element. So access to data was something, and what came hand in hand with that was a lack of expertise, lack of personnel within either industry or research infrastructures to be able to mine and analyse that data. Now, interestingly, when we talked with industry, they said that they were the ones who set up engagement with research infrastructures, whereas in the initial report, research infrastructures said that they were the ones who contacted industry and were being the proactive partner. So that's interesting. Both of them are claiming sort of, let's just say, ownership of who approached who. But I think it's an important aspect that we need to delve into a little bit deeper in relation to those, what I would call business development activities. So some main findings. Overall, it was very, very positive, first of all. So from an industry point of view, and I'm just going to read out a few key points here, and we can obviously delve into them further in breakout if the opportunity arises. From industry, barriers, lack of finance to engage with research infrastructures, the lack of in-house personnel, that is personnel within industry, understanding and knowing what questions to ask, knowing how to engage with research infrastructures, intellectual property, issues around intellectual property and ownership. Interestingly, a lack of information on what research infrastructures have to offer. Industry felt they themselves had to go and find and ask the questions, as opposed to research infrastructures and facilities being more open, being more proactive, and dare I say, looking outside the box with regards to that. And the need for a simplification of contractual procedures in engaging with industry. From research infrastructure's point of view, this is from research infrastructures when they're talking in relation to industry, is that there was a lack of appropriate business models for RI industry engagement. Now, nobody was saying that there should be a one-size-fits-all, but there doesn't seem to be any guidance on appropriate business models to use. Now, there's different ways that can be perhaps, we can debate and discuss that. Legal issues again, this is related to income generating activities, state aid, various other legal problems. Financial issues, what can be provided free of charge and what needs to be charged? And there seems to be a lack of understanding on this, which I still need to sort of understand that myself, and I'd really welcome views from experts here to sort of maybe discuss that in a bit more detail. And interestingly, a better sharing of experience, in other words, it's lacking. Sharing of experience, being able to explain who's doing, some research infrastructures are doing things really well, others are not doing it so well. Can we create a mechanism where we can share that experience and best practice? Finally, following on from that, some of the initial recommendations that we provided within the report, we need to further develop mechanisms for co-financing and stimulate for stimulation of industry RI interaction. Particularly think about vouchers for SME engagement, whatever about multinational or larger organisations, but for SMEs they felt that they really struggled with trying to get the financing, the support to work with research infrastructures. So perhaps EU national sort of vouchers being available for that. There is a lack of qualified staff, as I mentioned, cooperating with research infrastructures. This was identified as a barrier of cooperation for industry. So perhaps being able to develop training schemes for staff and users. Now, perhaps there could be an opportunity to create some form of research infrastructure fellowship. So think of Marie Curie. You'd be able to create an opportunity for cooperation between research infrastructures and Marie Curie. And imagine if you were able to parachute research infrastructure personnel into industry, or vice versa, somebody from industry into a research facility to get them that sort of training to help them be able to collaborate closer with the research facility. From a research infrastructure point of view, some recommendations, simplification of the funding rules. It seems to be overly complex. And interestingly, or importantly, I should say, is communicating it, really getting through that communication, creating a type of knowledge platform. Exploring possible optimal business models for cooperation with industry. And finally, a dedicated platform where sharing of good practices across research infrastructures with industry partners, that could help ease the development and the evolution of this with other research infrastructures, and obviously promote further cooperation. I think that's pretty much it I hope I kept within my 5 minutes, but that's it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I ask Monica, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here today. Today I represent the ERTO, which is the European Association of Research and Technology Organizations. And RTOs, they stand very close on one hand on the basic research, academic research, and on one hand very close to the industry, and we try to have the flow going towards new product and innovation on the market. Some of the RTOs, they operate themselves, research infrastructures. Some do as the institute I come from. We have them as a tool in our toolbox, trying to assist the industry and small, medium enterprises to get access to the infrastructure, especially the large ones. And we can also help them with the data analysis afterwards. But the absolute broad number and the focus is on technology infrastructures for the RTOs. And what is the technology infrastructures when we talk about them like this? Well, they are infrastructures that are leaning towards the applied research, and they are an important tool in the entire value chain, from the research up to the final verification, validation of new products and services going out to the market. So you can really say that the technology infrastructures are driven by an industrial need. And as research infrastructure, they have to constantly update themselves. They have to keep up with the pace of the research, and they have to develop constantly. And today, when they do so, the investments that needs to be done into the infrastructures are taken nationally or even regionally. But if we look ahead, the challenges Europe is standing in front of, for example, the net zero vision coming up, we really need to explore broadly all the technologies that we can really find to make this vision come true. And therefore, we cannot really have this national focus even on the infrastructure side. We need a broad variety of infrastructure for prototyping, demonstrating, scaling, and so forth. And what we think we need is for tech infra is a strategy, something that you on the research infrastructure side already have, and we've been looking a little bit on you there. And we are very happy for the ERA, in particular, obviously Action 12, since that's the focus for the Action 12, to have a technology infrastructure strategy for Europe, and also the advisory board that is planned in connection to this action. And we hope there will be room both for the operators of technology infrastructure, but also of the users of the infrastructure into this, so they can also come with feedback into the work. And finally, I will mention a coordinating support action, a CSA, called RETIFI, where we actually work very close to between the research infrastructure and technology infrastructures. What we do is we run a few pilots, and we follow the value chain, because we are actually part of a value chain. You have the research infrastructure going to the maturing into the technology infrastructures. We have a few thematic areas that we look into from a user perspective. So if you as a user in the thematic area want to use the research infrastructure or the technology infrastructure, what are the gaps, the needs that you need? And we hope that we will come up with models for service delivery. Can be business models, it can be skills needs, but we also want to come up with ideas how to fund this. So new funding mechanisms also for the technology infrastructure side that goes over the entire life cycle of the infrastructures. And hopefully we will have the recommendation in place to be implemented no later, obviously, than the next framework program.
Thank you very much. Excellent timing. And our last panelist, but not least important, of course, Monica. Not
Hi.
Monica, Judith, pardon.
Judith, yes.
Yes, Judith.
Okay. Thank you for having me, and I was very flattered by your invitation. And maybe I should say a couple of words about ERT first. So ERT is the European Roundtable for Industry, which is a platform for around 60 CEOs or chairs of Europe's leading industrial companies. We are cross-sectoral, so I can't tell you anything about sector-specific RIs. We are also cross-Europe, so I'm not going to speak about any particular country as such. And Europe, of course, means the EU, but it also means the UK, Switzerland, and Norway. The thing that unites ERT members is a very, very deep concern on Europe's industrial competitiveness. Not only looking at the internal competitiveness, but also very much looking at competitiveness vis-à-vis global peers. And that's not only because European companies want to be competitive to be profitable and to make their shareholders happy. And you all know that, it's because competitiveness ultimately is the foundation for prosperity of our societies. And you're probably not surprised that many of our members, probably all of them actually, are deeply concerned that at the moment Europe is facing a very steep decline in competitiveness, not only, of course, because global competitors are becoming stronger, look at China, or are becoming strong again, like the US, but also because we in Europe are probably very good in coming up with ideas, but we're not always terribly good in implementing them, just to put it that way. Now, innovation is the source of competitiveness, maybe not today, but certainly tomorrow and the time after. And if you lose the innovation lead, you will lose the competitiveness lead, you will lose the profitability lead, and you will find it extremely hard to get back on the horse later. I'm just saying that now because, of course, the reason we're here today ultimately is also, the reason I'm here at least, is to see how we can stimulate also the collaboration between industry and research infrastructures for the sake of innovation in Europe. Not only innovation invented in Europe, but also innovation commercialized in Europe. We have looked into that in this year actually with an innovation flagship. You can find it on our website. It includes quite a lot of innovation messages. It also includes a lot of examples of innovation projects by ERT members. And what it actually highlights, again, but also you all know that, is that R&D investment in Europe is not doing terribly well as compared to global peers, and is certainly doing very badly when you compare it to investment in innovation, R&D in South Korea or Israel, which are jurisdictions which you can consider as truly leading on that. Also because there is a very clear political agenda and very high societal acceptance that innovation is key. That is one problem. Another thing we've seen, the data show it very clearly, is that in Europe, R&D spending in basic research is probably well developed, but R&D spending in experimental research is much lower, relatively speaking, than in global peers. That's another one. And the last thing, and maybe that is actually a good news, is that innovation builds on collaboration. So even for very, very large European corporates, innovation means collaboration with academia, with research infrastructures, with startups, with SMEs, sometimes with government agencies. So it is a collaborative project, and considering that we're in the middle of a green and digital transition, it's also cross-sectoral, cross-discipline. There is a lot of spillover of thoughts from digital inspirations towards chemistry, sustainability and circularity goals for materials research, you mentioned. So it's no longer just one discipline for itself, it actually becomes a collaborative effort across actors and across disciplines in very many cases. And of course it creates huge opportunities. Now, if we look forward, probably one key challenge is to make sure that innovation and also collaboration between industry and research infrastructures, because you do have huge potential, has a strong business case for companies. And with a strong business case, what I mean is we need to keep in mind that the resources of corporates, even of leading European corporates, are finite. They're finite in terms of funding, they're finite in terms of people, and they're finite in terms of time, because innovation is a very fast-moving game. And if you say you want to increase the business case for innovation and the business case for cooperation with research infrastructures, then I fully agree with all the points that Michael raised right now and reported on. All these are extremely important, but probably what is just as important is confidence building. That means how to give industry the confidence that collaborating with RIs is actually getting them where they want to be. And innovation itself is already full of uncertainty. That's part of the definition, that in the end you never quite know what comes out of it and how long it will take. That means you want to at least have the confidence that you're partnering up with the right people, and that you're not going to spend years and years negotiating contracts and conditions, and in the end someone else on the other side of the Atlantic or on the other side of Eurasia is faster than you. Meaning we probably would really appreciate if it's possible to find a better way to talk to each other, to have more brainstorming sessions, ensurance that we find a way to align interests between industry, between research infrastructures, and also between technology infrastructures, to make sure that we can have brainstorming out of any pre-commitment setting, just to understand what the challenges are, what priorities are, also what industry needs, of course. And then I would say the other big thing is try to avoid duplication. If something is already pursued somewhere in a promising way, what else can we collaborate on in our eyes? So a general feeling of what's the strategy behind this, if I can say so. And maybe governments or the Commission can help arrange such dialogues or matchmaking between our eyes and industry, because as you said, there seems to be a challenge in finding each other. Meaning, how can we come up with platforms where our eyes and industry can find each other and build confidence and build a network? The last thing I wanted to add is if we manage to build more collaboration between industry and RIs, that is fantastic, but then the question comes, what after? So once you have made your breakthroughs, new results at the low TRL stage, where will that take you? Do you have to start from scratch again, then to find a technology infrastructure where you can move on to testing and higher level? research? I don't know. Does it make sense? Does it make sense to look at it more holistically from the beginning? Have some sort of chain you can follow through. Again, that would save time, it would provide certainty, and it would make it more attractive to engage in that project to begin with. And also, one thing is that if you were able to create a system like that, or at least some sort of channels, understanding, etc., you could make sure that quite a few of the ideas that might have been developed during the early stages and that might be discarded during testing can still come back on the drawing board and used for something else. So we can be more efficient with what we have, and we don't lose achievements just because there is, let's say, a system mismatch, if I can put it that way. And the last question I have for you is actually, we've been having a fascinating event with extremely relevant, interesting discussions and a lot of ambition, but what's now? What's going to happen now with all this? Where will the thoughts take us? And maybe the reminder that we do probably not have a huge amount of time. Because, as I mentioned, there is so much technological change at the moment. I think if we as Europeans want to keep the living standards we have and keep Europe as one of the best places in the world to live and study and work and retire in, then we probably need to be fairly strategic and fairly fast in making sure we don't lose innovation leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you all the panelists. I think the points that were raised in their presentations can lead you in the discussion in the group sessions that we will have. There are questions which are prepared already for the group sessions, but I think some of the points which were highlighted by our panelists should also be taken up in the group sessions as well. So we now break up again into the 3 groups as we did in the morning, and after 45 minutes or so, we reassemble here and conclude this panel. Thank you. Thanks to the 3 of you.
Okay. Sorry? Oh, great. Okay, great. So it's not Renee. No. Okay. Okay, good. Whatever you want. It's up to you. So if I think we start this, our homework again, and we have, now you have learned there are these 4 questions. We have 45 minutes, let's say 40 minutes, so that there is some more time. And this is the first question, more or less the scheme are similar before on different topics. And so here the first question that I think is the key session for this aspect is the challenges for the RI's industry collaboration. And so what would be needed to be developed, which actions needs to be developed, and in terms of providing the services and so on. So again, I'm trying to stimulate, I know that after lunch, people is more relaxed, so probably we need some push of some coffee or something. Okay, please.
Okay, so coming from a distributed research infrastructure in the biomedical field, there's one thing about industry collaboration which I would not see necessary as a challenge, but basically as a fact. So I mean, of course, as a research infrastructure and also as the research infrastructure hub, we will determine central strategies also in terms of industry engagement. However, when it comes to actual cooperation, it will be the national nodes, and it will also be the legal regimes of the national nodes, because we as infra-frontier research infrastructure usually do not enter into direct contracts with industry. And first of all, we do not own the assets. And I mean, also for industry, it does not really make sense to get into direct, in a contractual relationship with us. And that, of course, that's a good thing in itself. But sometimes this also creates some, because if we issue something, a direct contact, or we issue a kind of activity towards industry, but then usually we at least as organization, will not be the contractual partner. And in the end, it comes down to cooperation agreements and so on.
Yeah, this is an important point, because sometimes in terms of reporting, the interaction contracts are not done directly with the ERIC, but with the different sites. And so it doesn't come out. And this is common to quite a number of infrastructures, the distributed ones, has this aspect. So then also to find an instrument or a way how this came out and appears in the reports, because, okay, first him, but then Ange, then you, and okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We've had these discussions about industry and research infrastructures as long as I can remember. We have had constant presentations by the Commission saying we want to increase industry engagement. It hasn't worked. So something is wrong. I want to give you an example. I work in the space sector. And there was a report at the European Parliament recently. And I want to just read you out a couple of things, because I think it sets in concrete the problems that we face in this. Europe has the second largest space industry in the world. It employs over 231,000 professionals, and the net budget to the European Union is between 53 and 62 million. That is a significant industry. It doesn't use predominantly the research infrastructures that we have. If any of you in the room who run research infrastructures have people from the space industry using it, tell us. I know some do, but many do not, because it would be very interesting to collect those figures. We have some, but we don't have all. Unlike the United States, the largest amount of people working in the space sector, apart from a few big companies, are SMEs, who provide the chain for producing the materials for the space sector, building the satellites, doing the data analysis, etc. The Commission's Parliament's report wrote this at the end. The initiative by the European Investment Bank, I don't know if our colleague is still here this morning, is a positive step in facilitating the development of the European space services. However, while a culture of risk in Europe is needed to strengthen its global competitiveness, there is a perception that investing in space is high risk, unprofitable. This needs to change. If we do not change this cultural shift, Europe's entrepreneurs will not play a strong role in the development of the European new space sector and strengthening the EU's position as a leading global player in space. We also don't mention it, but space and research infrastructures play a role in defense. If we do not do some of the basic work about protecting our assets in space, in defense, we won't be having any more meetings like this. Because I would like to say not if there is a larger scale conflict, but when there is a larger scale conflict. If we have not worked out how we are going to protect our assets, particularly in space, many of the things that we talk about, we won't be able to do anyway. But the space sector has not been able, and the space industries do not feel that they can engage with the research infrastructures. They have problems on intellectual property right, they have problems on security, they have problems on access, they find it too complicated. And the structures for getting them access are not always compatible with the timescales that they need. I think that's an example, I think that's an example probably of other areas of industry as well, because otherwise, 10 years' time, you'll be having the same discussion of how you're going to get industry involved. We have to change something.
Yeah, and that, however, is a double point. It's from industry side and from infrastructure side. So the point is how it would be addressed. There is Ange, and then you, yeah.
Okay.
No, if you start talking, they start working. Yeah.
So I would like to echo what Michael said, that for distributed infrastructures, it's not a self-runner to work with industry, but at the same time, I would like to interpret this from a positive angle, that we can enable the nodes by providing templates, best practice examples from across the partners that already have positive experience and industry users to those nodes who didn't have this so far. So that's the angle we do this from the Europe-imaging side. So I'm now talking as Europe-imaging, not as ERIC Forum. And we have very good relationships with the manufacturers in the imaging industry. So we have an industry board up and running for 10 years. They were actually our first governance body. They are closely working with us to learn what's happening in academia when it comes to development, bringing the instrumentation closer to their applicants, to their users, to understand the market, to understand the future needs. So I would like to differentiate a little bit the picture here, that there are also positive examples. And even if in the distributed infrastructures in the life sciences, we sometimes feel to be very tiny players when it comes to the size of the organization, I think we have a key role here to play to disseminate the success stories and examples of how this can actually work. And it simply takes a little bit of time. I mean, we are, how old, 2-3 years, some of us, and it's starting to show now.
No, the point is the picture is quite scattered and different from one domain and another, one type of infrastructure. Here, excuse me, the microphone. Okay, let's start. Okay,
So I'll start, and I refer to Antje first. She said she's currently not representing ERIC Forum, but her institution. I change hat as well, and I represent my institution, which is ERIC, a distributed research infrastructure. Now, the way we see cooperation with industry is, first of all, yes, we have a problem cooperating with industry for a number of, because of number of challenges that were already pointed out by various speakers, by the panelists. Now, the point is that it's our duty, we receive it, we accept it as our duty to cooperate as much as possible, because we are expected to do so also by our funders, and we want to meet the expectations of the funders. Secondly, yes, we are distributed research infrastructures, and as Antje said, there's a lot that we can provide to our facilities to make them cooperate with industry better, like, for example, contracts and so on. However, we have also decided to sign contracts with our nodes so that industry can sign contracts with us, even though the work will be done by our nodes. Because it's easier for industry to sign one contract instead of 3 different ones or 4 different ones. So if they decide to go this way, we should be able to enable that. Of course, there are some, let's say, that there are some difficulties which we should overcome. But the fact is that one of the problems that was also addressed during the panel that causes lack of cooperation with industry is lack of visibility of research infrastructures. Now, distributed research infrastructure, if they work together, they will have a bigger critical mass and eventually they will be more visible than the nodes separately, for example, in a particular topic. So we are at the start, but let's see in 10 years whether this could work or not. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, probably will be mentioning and reinforcing some of the messages already said. Yes, but in a way, awareness is a very big issue. I believe that industry is not aware of the benefits that RIs can give to them. And for that, we need to build critical mass and also offer services that industry is also expecting beyond just pure giving data to them. As I mentioned before, like creating an environment, an ecosystem where they can go closer to market. Another point is also that is the funding part. He mentioned the US case, and there we see industry being one of the main users of labs, but we should look also at how they're being funded. And in many ways in the US, they receive funding indirectly from state to then access what we can also call technology infrastructures. And if we move on to the technology infrastructures, maybe a point in another question, but there often we're lacking the type of infrastructures that the industry needs. And as long as we don't address that, it will be very difficult to attract industry.
Okay, thank you. Pass the microphone. No, he was asking questions. Oh, you have already. Okay, go ahead. Start talking. And
Okay, Roland Roberts. My hat today is ESFRI, so I've been trying to keep quiet, but I felt I needed to say something now. The perspective in what's being said is from research infrastructures towards industry, and that's natural today. But I think we should remember that there are other perspectives. Industry often doesn't know what possibilities are there. They don't know what's going on in science. They don't know what new is there. So we need to help them to try to understand this. When you're interacting with industry, between academia and industry, it's often the case that individual to individual contacts are vital. You need confidence in each other. You need to know each other. And you need to have fora where you can get to know each other. And there are various national and EU programs specifically designed to do this. One of them is EIT, and some of the EIT initiatives, the KICs, some of them have been very successful in building very large industry academia networks, which are very effective at establishing these contacts. And that's my main point, that I think when addressing this, it would be wise to look around and see what already exists, especially within the EU, and see if things can be better coordinated, and I suspect that they can.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, then we pass to the next question.
The Business Development Office at the European Synchrotron. It's our job to work with industry, so I could do this for hours if you like, but I'm not going to. Judith has spoke the most sense for me today. All the stuff she was talking about, trust and confidence building. So industry are not going to come to us if they think we're elitist, expensive, risky, and scary. And we did a survey about the ESFRI on what industry has perceptions of us, and it was exactly that. So we have to break down those barriers. We're using European money at the moment with Streamline. It's a European project. We're going out to 30 events between now and spring next year only for industry, to build the trust and the awareness about what we can do. And that's going across all sorts of countries across Europe. Another thing that's been done at the ESFRI is very much top-down. Our stakeholders, the member states, have imposed an annual commercial income target. Starting in 2016, it goes up 5% per year, year on year. Boom, 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 boom. This year it's at 2.5 million euros. And they demand that we earn that. So that's very much also written into the ESFRI budget. Right? If we don't earn that income, there's less money for the ESFRI to use. And in terms of when you cut out our fixed costs, the investment money we have is about 10 to 20 million euros a year. So suddenly 2.5 million euros a year in terms of what we can do with that money is suddenly pretty significant. And so that motivates, it shows that there's a top-down requirement to go and engage with industry. And that's incredibly important in motivating the people at the ESFRI to actually sort of work and do the work with us. Within all of that, it's important to also be able to take a risk. When you're working with industry, maybe some things work, some things aren't going to work out. So we also invest in staff to go out and be able to work with industry as business developers or industrial liaisons. Sometimes we've done that with short-term contracts enabled again by European funding, or we take the internal risk because we think there's a business model in working with industry area X, and we go for it, we try it out. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, but we try it. So that internal culture of being industry-friendly, able to take a risk, and having the top-down push to work with industry is important. And the last thing I'm going to say is, also we see some of the younger staff members now actively wanting to work with industry because they want to see the impact of their research now. Curiosity-driven science is great, and it may have an impact in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but also some of the younger people want to see the impact now on climate change, on energy, on health. And one way they can do that is by working with industry.
Okay, last point, if it's possible. We have 3 other points to be addressed. There is Claudia, and then you try to be short because we have 3 other questions.
Just following about the success stories, and I think we haven't been good enough in communication to share our success story. And one thing we can do together with industry very effectively is technological development, improve our infrastructure together that then can be open. And we are at the moment in INSTRAC having one of these infra-tech projects where we are developing together infrastructure that then will be open. And we are working very effectively with some industrial partners. But there are other industrial partners that will be delighted to be part of this project. But they don't want to be beneficiaries of European projects because they don't want to do that part. They want to work with us, but they don't want to do the committees and all of these things. Then if there was a way to have some sort of industrial membership to Horizon Project, that could ease our interaction with industry.
Okay, very flash.
I will be very quick. I have an example from the Helmholtz Association. We have intermediate companies. Those are former workers at research infrastructures. They know how they work, and they look themselves from companies for them as clients for them. So that's a business model for some of our centers to look for the companies, and they really help those companies in seeing the necessity for them to measure at research infrastructures.
Okay, thanks. Other aspect when is the other question regarding the research infrastructure, the actions involving the complementarities of the activity of research infrastructure and technological infrastructure. And so then these are 2 different types of entities. So what would be your vision, ideas, suggestion on how this can be integrated or combine the services provided by these 2 types of infrastructure? Anja?
With the ERIC Forum hat on, exchange of relevant communication. So when I was preparing for today's meeting, I was looking for more up-to-date information on the TIs, and maybe it's me, because so many things are happening in parallel, but it would be really great if we could have a workshop together where the RIs and TI players, as well as the policymakers in this domain, are coming together to get to know each other, to learn from each other. Where are we? What's the status? I know it's another workshop, but I personally would find it very beneficial to get the latest up-to-date status from all angles so that we can answer this question.
Thank you.
So in the Neutron community, we had a very nice project to involve industry. And what I noticed is that there was a lack of communication, which was mentioned before, that the scientists didn't really know how to sell, so to speak, what can be done with neutron, synchrotron, and so on, to industry. So improving in this training for this exchange of information would be great. And the second point that I want to be actually very specific, it just came up as an idea right now, is what if we actually would go to these fairs and conventions of industry and offer to them, but then we really need to know how to communicate this, offer to them, look, you can do this. This is something that they don't know, right? They need to know, and this would be some places to approach them, that we have an ESFRI booth, so to speak, with very specific services that can be offered to that kind of industry. For example, many motor manufacturers, they do not know that we, with neutrons, can look inside the motors. So this could be an out-of-the-box idea.
Yeah, the exchange of information and knowledge, this is general at all possible levels, because there are basic science researchers that don't know the services of the infrastructure, industry don't know technological infrastructure with respect to research infrastructure, European Institute of Technology, I don't know how much is exploited or usage and known, and also is disconnected with the research infrastructure. So all these type of activities needs probably kind of umbrella that is coordinated and put together, are different type of actions, but they most likely need to have some kind of coordination. Please.
We are working on the marine domain. In the marine domain, we have a lot of connection with the industries in both sense, in the sense of as a providers of technology, as a users of technology. It seems to us very clearly the way to help the industry and to help ourselves, and we discovered this by a series of communication with the industry, which is a key factor, is co-design. I mean, as far as we are doing co-design, they are claiming that this is a way to engage industry in a market where they don't know very well. And it had been said here before, I mean, if you don't trust, you don't go further. But if you co-design, you share the risk. And this is one of the key aspects when you are in industry. Risk is important.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's important when talking about RIs and TIs, not to simply separate them in some kind of exclusive, non-exclusive overlap. Does that make sense? I don't know. The RIs, we do TI level services. So for example, at the ESFRI, we're starting to do battery testing. Bash a nail into the battery using a standard test. We do that on ID19. This is TI zone. Very high TRL. These are real batteries from real systems, really on the beamline. So I think stretching the RI brand into the TI domain and TIs in the other way, we're going to have natural overlap. And that's important because we'll learn from the TIs in quality control standards and working with industry at a higher level, and the TIs can also learn from us in some level of doing the more fundamental science. So there's not two separate boxes there, at least not for me.
Yes, that is a good point. And there are many initiatives, or many types of initiatives that are not fully integrated and are kept separated. And this is imply not efficiency in the, well, not impact or to some extent or exploitation of this.
So regarding the RI and TIs, workshop to discuss these topics. Yeah. And what are the complementarities, for example, and synergies. And this was partly addressed in Brussels, I think, a month and a half ago, where there was first such workshops. Here we couldn't organize it, but hopefully, well, the group that ESFRI has will continue working on this, also in the next period, so hopefully there will be more clarity. As for research infrastructures and what Ed commented, to include also, for example, offers, complementary offers that would be good for industry, for example, not to get a fuller service within a research infrastructure. the infrastructure that's closest to me also has in open access fuel cell testing lab and battery testing lab, in addition to synchrotrons and neutron reactor and so on. So, you know, if we consider what the industry in this case would want, we can try to develop services in the same way we try to develop the best services possible for our user community.
The key point that came out is just also the knowledge from the industry side of the service and the potentialities. Then availability is one aspect and be available to optimize, but also sometimes if there is no specific personal relation, they don't have the idea and the approach to, the idea to approach the infrastructure. That is independent on the problem of the trust, say security and confidentiality and so on. It's just really the appreciation of the potentiality of what the research infrastructure, technology infrastructure can do for their activity and development. Obviously, it depends case by case, depends on the type of infrastructure, depends on the type of services, but there is also this knowledge, this problem overall. If there are no other comments to this question, we go to the next one that you understand is again devoted to work program 25-27 and the framework 10. Please.
Maybe just one comment about, we always had in all the questions, it was about these work programs and so on. And maybe one thing that no one mentioned is the amount of documentation required to write a proposal and actually to also manage. And this makes things extremely hard also with industry. It's a lot of work that needs to be done, actually.
I didn't completely catch your point. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, please.
Very quickly, I want to support that last one. I think industry really, every time we have a new program, we say it's going to be simpler. Industry never finds it simpler. Quick turnaround times, ability to do things on a much faster timescale with a minimum amount of administration, particularly for small companies. They don't have the staff to do it. The funding, they need 100% funding. It's no good trying. A lot of these companies can't afford to wait for funding or payments at the for final reports and everything else. It just means they won't engage. Going back to the space sector, we have this big space sector. They don't use our research infrastructures. They use the American ones, right? And so we end up with a situation, and you talk about research capacities in Europe, we don't have a launch capacity. It's pretty important. We've now got to, we had to rely on the Russians, and now we're relying on the Americans. So that sector has got a lot of capacity, it's got a lot of opportunity, but something's not going right, and they should be using all the research infrastructures we've heard about these days, because that's an awful amount of capacity which they could use to be the leaders. And we're not doing it.
Yes, okay, you two guys, please, other people can have some comments as well.
No, I just wanted to give you the example of the aviation industry, where there's a pilot now being analyzed by the Commission, where if we want to achieve the objectives of, for example, deploying an aviation industry that is net zero emissions, you need TIs that are not available today. The TIs that industry needs, will need in the future, are interdisciplinary. They cannot fund also the construction of these TIs. They will need also interaction with the RIs. So what he was mentioning is, it's today that many companies are resourcing to the US to do their tests. And this is something that we should not afford. We need TIs also in collaboration with RIs, where our industry can do their tests, can do their experiments to reach our very challenging goals for the future.
we've talked to industry before. They don't want to get involved because the admin is just nightmarish. So just make it easier. And then we'll have industry coming through the doors because they'll get the funding. Right? It's clear. The SME access you heard about earlier on, support it because then we'll get the SMEs through the door. They can't afford it otherwise. And no IPR issues. The IPR belongs to them. European subsidy is absolutely fine. The other thing is tailoring services. So the tailoring of the service we did for BASF cost about 200K. Peanuts. But if we really want to do proper tailoring of services at a high level, it's not 200K that does it. We need proper infratechs at the 10 to 20 million euro level to then engage with industry and tailor real setups on the beamlines, in our case at a synchrotron, to enable us to do proper battery testing, watch catalysts aging with time over years if necessary. It's that kind of money that we need. It's not like in French, sur poudre, what's that in English? A little bit here and there that's going to work, right? Proper money that supports industry needs at the facilities and low admin.
This is a general European problem. Sure. European Commission up to now, this is the policies to support some additional funds, but this is beyond what we can discuss. But yeah, these are within this type of program. But the investment is another point that usually should be at European level in general. Yeah, that is. You, for the companies, can you have something to comment on this framework or program in the future? What do you think would be useful, relevant to suggest? I don't remember, your name is Judith? It's Judith, okay. Yeah, no, because it's a different, we are from the infrastructure side, from the research side, you are from the potential industrial user side, so then you have a different perspective.
Is it working? It's working.
Yes, yes.
I mean, I'm working for an association of companies. Yes. I can't tell you a sector specifically who needs what exactly. I think, how should I say, the idea to go out and engage with industry and be very concrete in what you can offer is definitely going in the right direction, because I remember having had a conversation with someone from a very, very research-driven, very sophisticated company, and I asked him in the run-up to this event, because I wanted to get his experience on working with ESFRI RIs, because I was sure that this company would work with them, because it was exactly the kind of company which you would expect to work with you. And his response was basically, yeah, well, no, we have a limited number of scientists, and we already have our corporations, and we don't really see the added value. Not in the sense it's not good, but in the sense of we are already, in a way, happy with what we have, and we don't really understand why, on top of that, we should work with research infrastructures. And I think that gets to the point of what's your added value. And make clear that people understand it. Not in the bubble, but outside the bubble. And that probably is a really important one, and that might actually also help overcome the hurdles for SMEs, because as you said, for SMEs, bureaucracy is already a nightmare. I mean, a nightmare, it's already a nightmare for large corporates, so you probably don't want to imagine what it's like for SMEs. At least I cannot, because I don't work for them, but I suppose it's substantial. So if you don't know what you get on the one hand, but you have very big apprehensions of what you have to go through in order to get something highly uncertain, then you're probably not even going to look into it. Meaning, make sure people understand what you can offer in an accessible way. Make sure that you get societal buy-in for what you're doing, that it's not just a huge amount of EU money that somehow is impossible to get to. And on that basis, I think come from it from two ways. One is show why you should join, and also try and help make it easier to join, not only for the large companies, but especially for the smaller ones, for startups, for companies who say, I would like to do something which is going beyond my traditional sector, so I actually don't have that expertise, but it would be really useful because we're talking about digital, we're talking about circularity, we talk about carbon reduction, sustainable materials. So there is, I think, a huge amount to gain, but people try to find solutions when they know that what problem they want to solve and why.
Yeah, no, the point is indeed, yes, is make simple, make easy, make trustable is one aspect, but then there is the other aspect from industry and then particularly SMEs, because the large companies is different. They really don't even ask the question how using some technology or doing some kind of, exploiting, doing some research or applied research, I can increase the level of my products, so this is a fact. So it's also from the industrial side that there is not the knowledge or the idea of progressing. So then I was mentioning, that we are, the impact of research and the activity or advancement of knowledge is not that high because there is disconnect, if you want, a lack of culture in some extent, because it's happened to me several times talking with SMEs, and they say, oh, really I can do this, or really with this technology I can acquire this information, I can progress. So we have to build up their project from the infrastructure side. So that is, now they are coming, the other people. We have the 4 questions. And so this is again landscape analysis, how this aspect of both collaboration with industries as well as links with the technology infrastructures, what it can be brought in the landscape analysis in progress. If there are some flash comments, otherwise all the other people are here. Yes, please. We still have, we were told to be back at 25, so that we are not bad with time. The other way are faster.
Don't forget the defense industry.
Don't forget that?
The defense industry.
Okay, yes. If the defense industry
we need it.
Is interested, okay, this is one of the industries, yes. It's not the only one, however. Yeah, that's just a flash point and then we stop because the other people. You can shout. Yes. Yeah, yes. Yeah, that is a key point, yes. Okay, so, yeah, last point, then we close it because the other groups are already here.
I mentioned this morning, which is also, we want to attract technology infrastructure or industry and working with technology infrastructures, also to consider the aspect of pre-normative research, because on pre-normative research, you're addressing future standards, and if you do that, it becomes a benefit to industry. Because when you are adopting standards, you have easier access to market, not only at EU level, but also internationally. So I think this dimension, it is a very big topic now in RTD, but I don't see that now in the RI landscape.
Yeah, that is a very key point, because that would be the leading entities if we define standards and they would be accepted by broad community, yes. Okay, thanks a lot. And now we have also rapporteur from the other groups. Thank you.